Hi, welcome to Cut and Uncut. My name is Daphne and I'm cut.
And I'm Bonnie Violet, and I'm Uncut, where we talk about all things trans
And then some.
and then some.
How you doing today, Bonnie?
I'm good. Yourself?
I'm good. Took us a minute to get to this, but I'm glad we made it
Yeah,
unscathed.
the intro will get to be where it's second nature to us once we do it a few times. But
Yeah. So this is our second episode, and today we want to talk about what this podcast is all about. And today we're going to discuss our hopes and dreams for this podcast.
that's exactly what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
So before we get going, though, we did want to take a second and thank our Patreon members. Did you want to do that?
Sure. Big shout out and a big thank you to our Patreon members, Skylar Bean, Jacob Blankenship, Elizabeth, Danielle Loyal, and Bertha D. Thank you and hugs and kisses.
And if you're wanting to join our Patreon, you can check out the links in the description. There we go. Getting all the business done, right?
Right.
Get it all done and over with.
Right. So for me, with this podcast, Bonnie, I am hoping to reach the masses and let people know that we are alive and we exist and we are just everyday people trying to make our way through this life.
Nice. And like the masses, my first thought was like, but yeah, I mean, I think I have a similar hope as well. And just really, I mean, I am mostly like selfishly, I'm just eager to have these conversations with you. Like I've known you for a couple of years now, but we live in different cities, and so we don't get to see each other all that much, and we've had conversations on the phone and those sorts of things, but I feel like there's just so much of your life that I don't know, and I know there's so much of my life that you don't know, and I don't know, I'm really just curious, and I'm excited to get to know even more of you. And selfishly as well, I think I want to learn from you, as like a trans person who's been living in the life a little longer than I have, like just being able to like learn from your wisdom and your experience. I'm just really excited about that.
Thanks, Bonnie. Well, as you know, it has not been easy, and I want to give big thanks to the people in my life that have been very supportive on this journey for me because it hasn't been easy. I struggle with alcoholism. I struggle with insecurities. I struggle with love life issues. And I struggle sometimes with family and work. I guess it's basically kind of like what everyday people struggle. Just it probably weighs a little bit more on me because I feel different and that the world sometimes treats me different, or that's my perception of it. So,
yeah. And would you say that your transness causes you to feel different in the world, or more so than other things, or?
definitely. Also because I'm Black, so you know how that kind of goes hand in hand with a lot of the judgment against me. I think growing up trans, I was bullied, picked on, and I felt separated and isolated. And I went to a lot of therapy, and I fought through it. I cried a lot. I drank a lot. I stayed to myself a lot, and I took a lot of abuse trying to find love. I just wanted love, and that's the biggest part of it. I think that the world needs a lot more love, and that's another thing that I really want to hope to spread through this podcast is love. That we're all here, just trying to make our way home to the upper room unscathed.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because I think, I love that saying in the rooms and other places that you cannot transmit something you haven't got. And when we're talking about love, I think in some ways we have to receive love in order to give it. But I think I also kind of believe in like the fact that abundance and love is kind of already like it's already present. It's already a thing. I think the biggest thing is being able to receive it And I don't think that we live in a time, and I know I struggle with, I think, trusting maybe people or circumstances enough to really kind of let myself
Mm-hmm.
feel that love, or I can get caught up in other things that kind of take me away from, I think, the benefits, if you will, from being able to really soak up the love that surrounds us.
Yeah. What to you is love? Can you explain to me what you
Mm.
are want to convey and you want to receive when it comes to the LOVE word?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately love is, I think it's the ultimate connection. It's actually feeling connected to somebody in all of the ways, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And I don't necessarily think, all of that has to happen all at once in order to feel or hear or see kind of love. But I think ultimately, I think when we find our lovers or those that we are in really deep relationship with, which could be family, whether chosen or the ones we're born with, or really close friends, where we can kind of begin to experience and receive love spiritually, emotionally, physically, through affection and touch,
Mm-hmm.
and just being present with people. So I think it's kind of like a combination of all that stuff, being able to actually feel seen and heard by somebody. And I think the ability to be held and to like be able to like fall apart or be vulnerable in front of somebody.
Yeah, and that's very difficult, because I've had some relationships in my life where before I did a lot of shadow work. And when I say shadow work, that means I had to really do a lot of work on myself and to understand that I'm okay in this skin. And people have taken, maybe my mother says, people take your kindness for weakness.
Mm.
And that can leave you vulnerable for people to um, use you. And I struggle with that. I have a big problem with saying no. And I
Mm.
really need to work on that. That's something that I struggle with all the time because I'm so kind. And I don't know if that stems from me being kind because I want to be accepted or I want you to like me. So here, take all my candy. You know what I mean? Or let me, give you the shirt off my back just so you can like me. But sometimes I don't think that's what it is. I think it's just because I'm a kind person.
Yeah.
And people can spot that and they can use that as a weakness and really hurt you, because if you're kind, you have to be aware of people trying to take advantage of that if you want to really find love, I guess, or be able to receive love. Does that make sense? Kind of.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's also important to realize that a lot of things can be true at the same time. I was actually talking with someone earlier today during a tarot reading, and we were
Mhm.
kind of talking about this a little bit in the sense of like, I think sometimes when we are in relationships, there can be lots of things true at the same time. Like we could desire to show up for our loved one and to care for them and to hug them and love them. And also, there might be a part of us that feels unworthy or that we need to earn that love, or there's some sort of tit for tat kind of,
Yeah. Hmm.
which I think is a more maybe the shadow side of things, right? But I think it can be a motive, and I think things can get a little wonky when that is the driving factor for me. There's definitely been plenty of times in my life where the fact that I'm feeling less than, and I need to make up for something sometimes drives what I do. And then that
Hmm.
causes me to have an essence and an attitude. And I think a presence that people can sense and feel, even if they're not completely aware of it, that I think it's not cute. Um, and so it's a part of, I think, my desire, but I also like you said, I have the desire, I want to be kind and I want to be nice and I want to be generous to people, and that could be a desire as well. But I think sometimes, it's just, I think being able to understand all those things at the same time, and really hopefully, I think, trying to develop the skill to lead with the more positive aspects of being in relationship with other, rather than coming from a space of deficit or
Yeah.
feeling insufficient or lacking.
Yeah, especially being trans for me, because now that I'm post-operative, I've had a sex change. I am single, but I'm still looking to find someone to love and to cherish and to be my companion. And a lot of men, because I only date men, they see me as this unique, sexual object to just try and, oh, I've never been with someone like that. I just want to, see what that's like, and exploit my emotions because they just want this sexual connection. And that can be, detrimental to me, because like I said, I'm a little sensitive. So looking for love can sometimes get misconstrued. So I have to be careful when it comes to things like that, because I have found out a lot that men really just it's my experience is that they were just looking to, get that experience, but I'm not someone that they want to take home to mom.
Yeah, and I don't think it's always like intentional. Like I think people could, think they're all for it and they're all into it, but then once it really comes into like being in the life with somebody who's trans, then it becomes this whole, especially I think when you're like in a heterosexual out facing heterosexual relationship and you don't identify as a queer person, but you're kind of, I guess, in a queer relationship, but not necessarily, but other people will kind of perceive that because they don't, most people don't understand what, to some people, trans is gay and gay is trans, and like it's all part of the same, I don't know,
All
meal.
balled up in there.
Exactly. Like I don't think a lot of people can understand what the difference is between those two. So I think in a lot of ways, a lot of men or people who date trans people who haven't end up having to go through this process of like almost coming out and like introducing us to friends and all those sorts of things. So I think people might not really fully understand what it means to be with a trans person for the long haul, for more than just a romp in the sack.
About my past relationship. That was probably the first time that I've actually experienced what I would perceive as a normal relationship.
Mm.
It wasn't I can't even explain how, if it was male and female relationship or two males or however other people would have perceived it. But I did feel love. Of course, he was, horrible other ways. But,
We all have our
that whole drama.
yes.
But I think that was probably the only time that, for me, I felt that I was genuinely loved for me. And it wasn't because of what I am, but for who I was.
Yeah.
Which brings me to a question, Bonnie. I know we're talking about hopes and dreams and what. I hope that you can put some, because you're the guru when it comes to this subject. Can you shed the light, and this is for educational purposes, people. Can you put some light on the pronouns? Because I had a friend call me today, and she was concerned. She's like, well, Daphne, I called you because I have a question. She works in HR, and she had a applicant who identifies as them and they. So she was baffled on, well, what is that? Is that gay? And then she proceeds to say, because you're in the life, and you're a queen, and you know all about all of that, which I don't. So right. Can you shed some light on that? Because I really hope that we can also get people to understand what it is to have pronouns.
Yeah. So one of our hopes is to kind of educate and inform folks. And
yes,
I think when it comes down to pronouns and people who are struggling with pronouns, I think it takes a certain amount of reflection and intention, we learn people's names. We call them by their names. Sometimes we create little nicknames and those sorts of things, but we learn those things. And, if I were to call John Robert all day, I think John's not going to be super thrilled with that. So I think there's an intentionality and a real mindfulness to say, I see you. I see that you are not, especially with like a they, them pronoun is typically somebody who is non-binary. So there's or genderqueer, somebody who lives outside.
Gender non-conforming, would you say? Because that's what Google said, because I Googled it. Like that's
no, totally. And so they see themselves as not the stereotypical like she or woman or the stereotypical man. They might not even see themselves as a man or a woman. Some people might actually see them as both. So it really just kind of depends on the individual and their understanding. But when it comes to using a they, them pronoun, you just use they instead of he or she, and I think if you really are mindful and recognize and can notice that this person is living in a certain way and wants to be seen in a certain way, then you learn how to do that. And it's so important to have that intention, because how like it is when like somebody misgenders you, especially if it's somebody that you love, somebody that you care about, somebody that's a professional. And especially when you're just starting a new relationship with someone and you don't know where they sit with you, you're going to take it a lot to heart and you're going to take it personal. You're going to be like, they called me that because they don't see me as who I am, or they don't believe that I'm a trans person, or they, like there's all these little stories that we can tell ourselves about it. But so I think it's really important to try to pay attention and to do your best. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect, but I think if you can have a connection with that person, then they can begin to understand that it's not personal. And it is a newer like thing. I mean, I remember when I first started doing podcasts, there was a couple of times where on air, I like misgendered myself, which I think is really easy for people to do that has been in relationship with you for a long time. And then you transition a gender.
So I know, for instance, you say like family.
Exactly. Yeah. I think I've noticed for family, sometimes it can be a little bit harder, or it can be easier to kind of drop into that other pronoun or that old pronoun. I think part of that too, I know, is when you're talking about the past or the history. Mm-hmm. I know even for me, sometimes when I want to refer to like my childhood, I was raised as a boy. So sometimes it feels weird to say when I was a little girl. Do you know what I mean? Because but it also feels weird to say, to not say that, and so I think that it is a little like there's some clumsiness that's probably going to happen for yourself and for individuals, and we really need to be able to try to help like give one another grace with that.
Yes. And that's exactly what it is: kindness and understanding and respect, and at least try. Mm-hmm. Because I'll admit it's new, and I'm an old school queen, and when we talk about recovery, which we will get into. I promise you, we will get into recovery, because that's exactly how I actually came to accept myself, is through recovery. But I still struggle with sometimes trying to remember pronouns, because the reason I said that is because I had a sponsee who is gender nonconforming. They are transitioning with very slowly, but still transitioning, and does not look the gender, or at least, but I still find myself using the wrong pronoun.
Yeah.
And I have to catch myself, and then I'm amazed at how some people can just flow it off. Oh, they, and then I say, who's they?
Yeah. And oftentimes we do use they pronouns when we don't know somebody's like gender, or even when we say, oh, somebody left their keys, or somebody, yes. Did you see that person and what they were wearing, or whatever? Sometimes we might say, do you see she or her? But why not use they? I think a lot of the times, even just practicing they
Do you think
can
it's an age thing, like the millennials or the?
I think there
How do
is
you that?
I think there's a cultural understanding. And so I do think it's something that speaks to our culture and time. But I don't think that being non binary or gender non conforming or even a they them is a new thing. But it is newer in the sense that we're identifying with that and we're naming it something. Whereas I think, there's a lot of like folks that are a little bit older who would never identify as trans. They're just gay boys, but like other people might look at them and say, oh, that's a trans person, or because that's just the labels that we put on, but that's not a label that individual, like that's not how they see themselves. You know what I mean? And so I think it's important to recognize that it's not a new thing. I think
Yeah.
we're just learning how to better recognize and affirm it, because I think for a lot of times you're just like, oh, we just don't talk about that. It's like, oh, how Uncle Daryl is, that's
Yeah.
just Uncle Daryl, Whereas I think now we're just trying to be a little bit better. And I think people are wanting to really be seen more wholly, and to not have to leave that part of themselves in the dark or in the closet. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really just a part of growing. And I think it's a part of us wanting to, I think individuals are really demanding, I think, and not in a bad way, but they're owning who they are and how they are in the world a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and I don't even know if more, but I think there's the element of that. And I think also people are just I think people also want to be kinder and better with people who are different than themselves
Yes.
in
And
general.
sometimes it's just I get so comfortable in my role as female now, and I'm so happy. You know what I mean? It's the best thing that has ever happened to me. And when I struggled with the comfortability and the acceptance of me, like, this is who you are, Daphne.
Mhm.
Um,
So that was a journey for you too, even though you like knew it and you started the process, there was still kind of those moments of like
yeah,
struggling to see yourself even fully.
yeah, yeah. And I think that not as much anymore, because I don't even see myself as, to be honest, female or male. I just see Daphne. Does that make sense? I don't try to identify myself as, a woman, because we can get into a whole world of, but I don't see that. I will never tell somebody, you know what I mean? Identify, I'm feminine, I'm Daphne. That's who I am. The roles that I put on are feminine, and the role that I am and the way that I come off. But if you ask me, I'm trans, but it took a lot for me to get comfortable with that, and that's labeling me, and I don't really like labels. So
Well,
maybe I'm a them, they.
well, I mean, that's kind of up to you to figure out, and we're allowed to change. We're allowed to discover and explore and
Yes,
become whoever we want to become, and I think as long as we're
I love that.
genuinely, like, authentically trying, who cares what anybody else says, as long
Yeah.
as we're as long as we're being authentic in kind of working toward whatever that is. We don't have to be the same. I mean, I hope we're changing
Yeah.
as individuals and as people. I don't want to be the same person I was. I want to have the same values, and I want to have, I want to be connected to, I think I have the same spirit, but, I
Mhm.
want to see the world differently. I want to be impacted by people that I meet that are different from myself. So I want to be changed by knowing them. I want to be able to be more mindful and just more aware and have a broader understanding of how other people live, but also how the way I'm living is impacting people. Because
Yeah.
oftentimes I think that's I think intent and impact, I really care about the fact that my intentions is actually how people receive me as well.
And
And
that is the most important part.
yeah, and I think a lot of us don't do that. We just like, oh, I know that my intention was not to harm you. So if you're hurt, that's your shit. Where instead of me being like, oh, I hurt that person, it's like, I stepped on their toe. I'm going to acknowledge that and say, I'm sorry, that was not my intention, but it happened. It doesn't negate that the person's toe was hurt by that. So I need to be able to acknowledge and not even really take it personal or even take it as a moral failing, which I think is a lot of the times the way that people get into. It's like this, it's more of like, you're an asshole because like you misgendered somebody or you harmed somebody unintentionally. And it's actually, no, you were ignorant, or you had a privilege, or you had a blind spot, or you had something that didn't allow you, regardless of your intent, to keep yourself from harming that person. And to be able to learn that and know that from someone is just so powerful. You know what I mean?
So can I ask you if those notifications are popping up on this live?
Yeah, there's somebody who joined us. Hi, Mary Johnson.
Hi, Mary.
From Lawrence, Massachusetts. Thanks for joining us. Glad you could join us. Sorry, it took us a minute to say hello. We're still getting used to this process together. And we are talking about our hopes and dreams. And I think it's great that we are kind of like, I don't know. I think part of it is like, what is this world that we're living in? What is this world that we want to live in? I think it's been great what we're talking about thus far. How about you?
I think so. And the other thing that I would really want to share is that my hopes for the world, I am so hurt at how the world just cannot find grace for one another. My hope is to find grace here, for us to be in a safe space, to spread the seed of love, and that goes in many ways. And when I say love is education, love is knowledge, love is giving of oneself, understanding, trying to connect with someone that you don't normally connect with, because once you get that thread together, there's so much more. I think you become even a bigger person just by getting to know them, wanting to know them, but just by simply saying hi. It can be so rewarding. I feel that it's an emotional connection. It's an automatic thread that just gets together. That invisible thread connects. And the world struggles with trying to make these connections. With what's going on with, the wars, and what's going on with the immigrants coming in. And there's so much more to that we're just not seeing. And a lot of people just probably aren't even being really honest with ourselves about what can we really do to connect. And so I think another hope for me is to unite and understand that we're in this together.
Yeah. And I think the key to that is really for us to be able to live more truthfully and honestly. Like, the truth of the matter is, things aren't as bad as they look on TikTok or on the news. Like, those are very hard things. I'm not negating that there are not difficult things that are happening and really big things that impact us. But I think when it comes to like reality, I think we are a lot more kind. More people are a lot more kind and a lot more like are better with people than how you would think if you were just watching social media or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think people care that much. I don't think people even care that we're trans. That many people really care. They're like, okay, you're trans. Like, I don't care.
Move on.
It's like, I don't have an opinion, which is the way it should be. None of us should really have an opinion on somebody else's life. You know what I mean? And I think that's the truth of it. I think most of us don't really care unless you're harming me, and then that's when I began to care. So, I mean, I think there is like this delusion and this perception of the separateness and the lack of connectedness. That, I mean, the truth is that we're all connected. There isn't anything that I do that doesn't impact other people. And I can lie to myself, and I can create boundaries and these pretend walls and all these sorts of things to kind of like make me believe that there's that separation, but that's not the truth of it. So I think we have to really get to the point of just because there's a border, why does that, I don't know, like why is, I don't know. My Alexa is talking to me. I hope you weren't
You
hearing
heard you say that word.
that. I know my Alexa was like, you have it. I'm like, shut up. I tried to talk over her, but anyhow.
She wants to be on the podcast too. So
Yeah.
yeah, but that's one of the things. And I hope to find people who want to share some of their experiences and bring them to the table. A lot of other things that I hope to talk about is abuse. I want to have an open space about all these things. I want to talk about recovery, where I keep talking about that because that's the biggest part of who I am today. Is the recovery part. I also want to talk about the race relations because that's also who I am today. I also want to talk about parents. I also want to talk about upbringings. All of that stuff is what I hope to bring forward. And I definitely want to talk about fashion.
Right. Well, I'm hoping for us to be able to like to also like I hope for us to be speaking and talking about the solution and kind of being on the other side of things, because I know like I've struggled with enjoying so much of life and tapping into a lot of these different things. And so like I hope to be on the other side and to be able to actually speak into the other parts of existing as a trans person or a person in this day and age or whatever. And so like I'm eager and excited to be on the other side and to not identify so much with the struggle and the conflict and the lacking, and really be able to focus on the abundance and like moving forward, not in a way that's like blind or like unauthentic, but be able to really let a more positive aspect really animate my body and let that drive me to do or not do what I do in life versus fear or pain or hurt or any of those things that I tend to I think I've just been doing a lot of shadow work the last couple of years. So I'm excited to have done that. I understand the value in it, but I'm really, really looking forward to starting to be on the other side of that in an authentic way.
I love that. So what do you do when you find yourself in these situations where you want to make a difference and you want to show the world that, hey, I can do something to be a part of the positive? What are some things that you do, and what would you recommend someone that wants to do some things like that?
Yeah, I think to some degree, I'm figuring that out in a lot of ways, because I used to navigate and get through the world and do shit and accomplish things through a lack of, I was kind of blinded to some of the wreckage that I was causing or the harm that I was causing, or, you know what I mean? And so, much of my younger years, I just pushed through. I often say I chased the glitter. I only chased the light instead of the light, and just pretended that there wasn't hard things, there wasn't difficult things. And I just kind of ran from it and avoided it. And then I think there's a sense of over-identifying with it as well, letting that become my personality or my how I see myself in the world. And so I think the big thing is being able to, as I was talking with someone earlier, it's like I'm no longer, some of my wounds are healed, and I really need to like step forward with that healing, and again lead with the healing versus the hurt or the pain or the wound, so to speak.
Yeah, I think these types of podcasts and things like that, they really help Also community helps, finding groups that you can feel relation to. I think a lot of people just don't know what resources are out there for whatever it is that we can do our part in, even if it's just a one-on-one conversation, having a coffee date, or putting yourself out there to, you know, AA was that for me. Fellowship was that for me. You are that for me. And these are all positive things that I can grow to be comfortable. Yeah.
Stop it.
And these are all, and my sister, Lord Jesus, my sister in counseling. Those things really help me and ground me to want to go out there and just tell my story and hopefully connect with someone that can relate and want to share their story so I can connect and relate and have that understanding that, hey, I hear you. My sponsor told me once, we